Hey guys, it's Jake here with eTrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at and I'm going to show you how to replace one of your Firestone red label air helper springs. Now there's many different reasons of why you would need to replace one bag and not both. If you're wanting to replace both bags, chances are you've just had them on your truck for a long time. I know my personal vehicle, I had them on for about 7 to 8 years, and it just got to the point to where the center band started to get a little weaker, and then when I pumped it up to about 70 pounds one time, that center band broke. So I went ahead and replaced both bags because they were pretty old and just needed to be replaced at that point. All the rest of my stuff was fine, my compressor was fine, but the scenario we had here is we just had these airbags put on about 2 months ago, and something happened and the airbag itself got shifted and it started leaking on top of the bag, and the compressor was fighting to try to keep up with it. But there's other points of failure too, just like if you don't keep a constant 5 psi in these airbags, the rubber will constantly squish on itself like this and rub holes in it. And a lot of that kind of stuff is not going to be covered under their warranty, so you want to be sure to be following the rules of how to properly take care of and maintain your airbags. So all in all, if you're needing to replace one airbag and not both, I think it's kind of nice that you can buy just the one. Like I said, this kit's not very old, so we're not going to replace the other one. It's doing just fine. But being able to replace just one and not have to buy an entire kit to do a repair, if you mess something up in the installation, stuff happens, you can get this done just one bag at a time. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at that now. So the issue we've been having here is that our driver's side airbag is leaking pretty bad. You can actually hear it coming out, which is never a good sign. The owner of this vehicle came back to us and asked if we would check these because the air compressor has been turning on pretty constant to try to keep air in this airbag. So what we're doing is Tom is trying to hold about 50 psi in here, and we're spraying the top of our airbag all around our airbag because I already checked the fittings and the fittings are not leaking. But you can see here on the side, there's actually air coming in on that side. There's air coming out between the top of the bag and the bottom of our bracket. So chances are it's something wrong with the top of the bag. So we'll go ahead and get this pulled out and see if we can't find the problem. It's like a bubble show. I've got the bottom side of our airbag disconnected. I just took the 2 bolts off the bracket and then took this big nut off the top. And I can tell you right here, I'm still going to pressure test it. That little nub there is crushed in, which means it probably didn't end up in the cracked hole lined up perfectly and ended up getting crushed by the weight of the truck. I'll go ahead and try to put some air in this, and then we'll see if that's where the air is coming out. I'm going to add a little bit more air in here, and with no weight, even without the weight of the truck, this thing is leaking fast. So we'll spray this with a little soapy water, and that's exactly where our bubbles are coming out of, is the top of that bag. So we'll get a new bag and get it replaced. And when you get your replacement bag, we're going to need to reuse our hardware. So we'll take the little valve plug out of here, transfer it over to our new bag. And if you didn't install your airbags the first time, we're just going to tighten this until we get to the end of that thread sealant. Like that, and then we're going to take the bracket that we took off the bottom of our airbag, take the same bolt that originally was on it, and thread that back in the bottom. You want to leave this loose because when we put it back into place, we're going to make sure we get it lined up. That may have been the issue with this one, is it may not have been lined up perfectly, and then when we set it up into place, it was kind of sitting a little cockeyed, and that could have crushed that pin, which then ultimately led to our leak. So we'll make sure that this slides up into place first. We're going to mark the bag and you can see the old marks on here. We're going to mark the bag and the bracket with a different color marker, and then that'll tell us where the orientation of the bag needs to be and how it needs to be spun. to be installed correctly. So we'll go ahead and lift this back into place, get it all marked out, bring it back down, and then tighten it back up. The very important part for us is, if you want to look up underneath the bracket, is we want to make sure that this airbag is not going to spin. So right here, it can kind of rotate and spin, but there's 3 notches up in there. If I lower it just a little bit like it was before, it can spin like that. What you want to do is spin it until it pops up in there, wiggle it back and forth, and it will not move. So once you've got it there, make sure it's straight up and down. We're going to make sure our bracket is straight too. Tuck tight up against the back here. It's right where we want it. Just put a couple marks on here for reference. And I know that our airbag is all the way that way of the bracket, so it should make it a little easier. We'll pop this out and get that Allen head bolt tightened down. Now, because we don't know if this nut came loose or not, what I did is I used a little bit of blue Loctite, and I'm just smearing it on the inside of the threads. And that way, the blue Loctite will keep it from vibrating loose. Maybe this truck is putting out a frequency or something that's causing it to loosen up a little bit. But you'll be able to break this loose if they ever need to get the bag off. But we'll just put this back up into place and tighten it back down. Now that we've got our airbag nut back on top, we're going to take the brackets and we're going to put them back on the front and rear. We'll tighten those down and then put our airline back in place. Now we've got our bag hooked back up. I'm going to put some air in it, and then we'll hit it with some soapy water. We're going to put it on the air fitting. And then we're going to go through and we're going to check all of these fittings to make sure everything's okay. So we're spraying all over. We definitely shouldn't have the same issue we had last time, but we do need to make sure that our air fitting on top is not leaking any air. Once you've tested everything out and you know that none of your connections are leaking and for sure that the top of the bag's not leaking anymore, that's going to do it for installation.